visited Chapeltown, and as it was snowing, Mum and I thought it would be good to go tobogganing with Laura and Robert. Mum got rather carried away, and on one run I thought she might end up in the river. And in the summer the family came together for Caroline and Mark's wedding. Margaret, Charles and Emily came to house sit at Geldeston Rectory while we set off on a tour of California and the Golden West with Mum and Dad. Bought a new compact computer from Dixon's for £899, having avoided the hard sell for their insurance. With the new computer came a special offer of a free upgrade from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95. However, having installed the new operating system, several pieces of software refused to work properly. Foolishly, I attempted to put things right and only succeeded in making things 10 times worse. After many telephone calls to Compaq, with long waits for attention and poor advice, I was left with even more of a problem. One software engineer had taken me on a journey into the software, changing many command instructions. However, when he realized that none of this was working, he just put the phone down. On ringing back, I found myself in another queue. Eventually, I traced the number of Compaq's headquarters in the Netherlands, and with the help of a sympathetic receptionist, was put through to a manager who arranged for a set of 40 discs to be sent to me free of charge, so that I could reload the computer from nothing. What a relief! Now began the process of finding a way to transfer all my data from the old Amstrad computer. However, I discovered that Amstrad WordStar data was not recognized by Microsoft Word. However, when Roger visited us at Christmas, he wrote a short program that solved the problem and saved me lots of potential retyping. One of the features of living in Geldeston was the frequency of power cuts. The ancient substation fixed to a pole at the end of the village failed yet again in a thunderstorm, and so the clergy chapter Eucharist was held again by candlelight and coffee made on a calagas stove at the rectory. Later on a walk, Jan and I passed the farmer, Robert Anguish, who was waiting for the eastern electricity to restore power so that he could milk his cows. Jan and I joined an art class for 5 mornings at a bargain fee of only £10 each. Nigel, who had tutored Jan's class at Loddon, led it, taking us to a variety of locations and giving a painting demonstration before we had a go. Jan had bought me a watercolour set for my birthday, so we were both set up. My favourite location was looking across the marshes to Blyborough Church. Dad had a heart attack while on holiday at Pwllheli. Margaret, who was with him, helped him along the beach to a doctor's surgery, from where he was quickly admitted to Bangor General Hospital Coronary Care Unit. The administration of the necessary drugs saved his heart tissue from deterioration. We were about to set off on holiday in Scotland, and so booked in for bed and breakfast near Bangor on the way, visiting Mum and Dad at the hospital. We took the ferry over to the Isle of Bute and visited Mount Stuart House, home to the very wealthy Earl of Bute, who had wisely invested in the Cardiff docks and South Wales coal mines in the 18th century. At Loch Ness, we called in to the Office of Tourism to ask about Urquhart Castle, and were very surprised to be told by the young woman there, "I wouldn't go there, it's just a ruin." Also visited Culloden battlefield, where 250 years ago Bonnie Prince Charlie was defeated by the English. James Wolfe was commended for his part in this battle and was appointed Lieutenant Colonel of Fort George in the Moray Firth. This was Europe's most formidable fortification, so effective that the French never did attempt to invade. This was the same James Wolfe who later, as a general, stormed the Heights of Abraham at Quebec in 1759 and took over Canada from the French. In 1959 I was in the audience for the Royal Tournament at the Earl's Court Exhibition Centre when this event was reenacted on the 200th anniversary. The family came together at Geldeston Rectory for a weekend party to celebrate Paul's 21st birthday. We had a nice time together and the girls won the car treasure hunt. However, I was left with a pastoral problem created by Mark Cashin, who had upset Irene and Robert Wilson, in whose home he was taking bed and breakfast with his loutish behaviour. Alison Folks of Dumborough asked me to visit her because she believed that her cottage was possessed. Not being satisfied with my ability to remove the bad spirit, Alison wrote to Bishop Peter. So my next trip to her house was with Ron Tuck of the Diocesan Deliverance Team. We listened to her and prayed in each room. However, she was still not happy after that. Later, Alison wrote to us to say that she intended to leave Dumborough Cottage, but in the meantime, please let me have bed and breakfast at the rectory. I'll not be demanding, she wrote. Later, she telephoned and went ballistic and slammed the phone down when Jan told her that it would not be possible. Eventually, she sold the house and moved to Beccles. 2 years later, Jan saw Alison in Lowestoft and instantly recognised her grey wig and battered shopping trolley, which she used to park in the middle of Gilliam's main street to encourage passing motorists to give her a lift to Beccles, despite the fact that she has pots of money and could afford a limousine on permanent standby. Next, she asked Jan to help her in supervising the transfer of her possessions from storage to a hotel in Leiston, where she now resided. The manager of the storage company warned Jan that the last time they had stored Alison's things, she insisted on going through every box and counting every book. In 2002, Jan and I visited Peel Island while on holiday in the Lake District and discovered that Alison Folks had sponsored the pond on a visit there and was thus conferred with the title Baroness of Peel. I took this photo of Rod, the castle caretaker, and Jan standing by the plaque that celebrates Alison's contribution to the island. In 1994, at Bungay Swimming Baths, I swam 2.5 kilometres for cancer research. Jan counted the lengths, and it was given publicity in the Beccles and Bungay Journal. By 1997 I had increased the distance I was swimming at each session to 3 kilometres, in preparation for the British Telecom swimming marathon in aid of the Prince's Trust. I completed the 5-kilometre swim in a time of 2 hours and 7 minutes. Catherine came along and counted my lengths and earned herself a t-shirt. Bishop Hugo's Holy Week mission began on Palm Sunday with a group family service at Ellingham Church. During the following week he visited Gilliam School, the Geldeston Soup Lunch, and a number of homes for tea and a chat. And as well as taking part in a number of Holy Week services, took lunch at various big houses. The Good Friday devotional service that we shared was particularly poignant. On Easter Sunday, after Bishop Hugo's final service here, Pam and John and their sons Russell and Gregory paid us a visit. The boys were intrigued by the stereo sound of a train passing from left to right when my computer was switched off. John Lowry and I attempted to climb Ellingham Church Tower. The first stage involved hauling a ladder through a 4-foot square hole 30 feet above the tower floor. The second stage involved balancing the same ladder on a bell beam in order to reach the roof hatch. At this point I told John that to proceed further without the correct equipment was unnecessarily dangerous, and should be left to builders with the correct equipment and know-how. One very windy evening the doorbell of the rectory sounded, and there was Doug Sayer. Geldeston Church's flagpole was breaking and in imminent danger of crashing through the roof. The next thing I knew, Doug, Jonathan and I had climbed the tower and, buffeted by a gale, were freeing and lowering the flagpole. From the ground it must have looked like the famous Iwo Jima statue that stands in Arlington Cemetery, except that they were erecting the flagpole. It was an enormous relief when it was over. There were many trees in our garden, and on several occasions pruning was needed. One year I was cutting back a green gage tree that had really taken off, when unfortunately a sawn branch fell the opposite way intended, onto the phone line leading to our neighbour's house, and the line became disconnected. Hastily I took a stepladder round to Stack Meadow and refixed the multiple wires back into the connector box. To my absolute relief and amazement, Lorna's telephone worked the first time. The next day I called Snowy Rolt to come and help me cut the tree down to size with a chainsaw. Dave Pearson, who we had met at St John's College, came to stay with us on a number of occasions. He spent much of his time living in India, returning to the UK when his visa ran out. In the UK he stayed in a caravan owned by a sheep farmer in the Lake District, and also with a variety of friends around the country, until the new visa came through. Dave told us how hanging or washing out in India is problematic because monkeys take the clothes and try to put them on. One day he had managed to retrieve a vest, but decided to leave his underpants on the monkey that was now wearing them. Graham Bray, a local character, said that he had arranged for a party of parishioners to go to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen Mother, Princess Diana and Prince Charles in person. He wrote an article for the magazine telling those interested to book with Jan. Fortunately, the editor stopped the article and warned us. Jan told him not to use her name without permission. We woke on the last day of August 1997 to the news that Princess Diana had died in a car crash in Paris, and then went to Stockton Church for the group service at which Archdeacon Michael Handley was preaching. We included the tragedy in our prayers, but was surprised that people there hardly mentioned her death. Such a contrast to the media response that morning. We organised a memorial service to Princess Diana in Geldeston Church on the eve of her funeral. Many people came who had never been seen in church before. Jan and I spent the following day, like many other people, watching the funeral on television. Sylvia Fuchs rang later in the day to say that they had had to go to Alton Broad at 9:30 a.m. and that they did not meet a single car the whole way there. In the early evening, Jan and I drove to Broome Common for a walk, and even at that time there were so very few cars about.